Hi, welcome to yet another episode of Swipe Right for Talent, joined by my co-host, co-founder Divya. Divya, again, as I said last time, we have now become experts at this,
Pros,
right?
complete pros.
Pros,
Yeah.
yeah. When we do it in one take, no
No
retakes,
retakes.
no retakes like earlier.
Yeah.
So yeah, today we have a very interesting episode planned. Divya, I think you've got a whole list of questions that we've been researching over the last month or so. So yeah, over to you to kick this off.
Absolutely. So I think today we're going to be covering on how CBREX is making a difference in multi-country hiring for organizations.
Mhm.
Right. So my first question, Gautam, is that typically when companies are expanding globally, or maybe within even within India across multiple locations, what they have to do is they have to scout for recruiting agencies, right, and negotiate maybe 50, 60 contracts with them, and then ultimately just hope that okay, these agencies deliver. So how does CBREX take this entire pain away for these organizations?
Yeah, I think if you look at it, the best example I can give on this is that CBEX is like a Swiss knife. So we look at a army Swiss knife, right? It has these 5 or 6 blades, right? It solves multiple problems, right? Unlike a normal knife, which you can just use to cut something, the beauty of a Swiss knife is also have a screwdriver, right? It'll have like some, 5 or 6 different things, which is why it became so famous. So we are very similar to that, especially for companies which are expanding globally. So if you look at a company that's expanding globally, they don't have only one problem. They have 5 or 6 different problems, right? And each of them need a solution. So one is of course sourcing. That's the basic problem. I need to hire in Poland. I need to get the right kind of talent in Poland. So that's obvious. Second is contracting, because if I want to hire in Poland, then I need to contract with local agencies in Poland. Now I don't know who they are, so I have to scout for them. I don't know what the rates in Poland are. I don't know what kind of contracts do Polish agencies sign. So contracting is a big problem. Third is payment, currency problems. Now I may not have a facility to pay in Poland, so I have to take care of that piece also. Now, if I had another country to Poland, I also am hiring in Germany, then I have a multiple currency problem, because now I have some Polish agencies, I have German agencies, maybe I have a UK based agency who wants to get in, who wants to get paid in pounds. Then I have no means to know whether these agencies are good or bad. So I have an evaluation problem, right? So that is the other. Then I have my procurement, or if I'm a smaller company, it's me itself dealing with multiple agencies, multiple contracts, multiple currencies, multiple invoices, and then I have a sourcing problem. Okay, so
Yeah.
like it's like not one problem,
Yeah.
and that is where CBREX comes in. We are really like that Swiss knife, which has those 5 blades, and through those 5 blades, we can help organizations who we call these global scalers, who are expanding across the world, contract with agencies, pay the agencies, evaluate the agencies, take care of the currency problem, currency risk, and ensure that they don't have a sourcing problem.
Okay.
Because all that is through the CBREX single window. And that is really the key differentiator that we have as compared to other platforms in the market.
So what you're saying is that finding the candidate is just one part of it,
Correct.
but we also take care of the the payments, dealing with different currencies, and also the legalities, all of that.
Yeah.
Right?
And because as we discussed 2 minutes ago, for these companies who are expanding globally, finding the candidate is only one of the
One of the problems.
yeah. I mean, it is a big problem. We're not denying it. Obviously, it's 50% of the problem. But the other 50% of the problem is these other things which we just discussed. And they need a solution for that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And it helps not only the TA team, it also helps the accounting team. It helps the procurement team. So that's why I'm saying it's like a Swiss knife. It's not only solving the sourcing problem, it's solving multiple problems for what we call the global scalers. And therefore, CBREX is like the perfect single window that these guys need.
In fact, this takes me back to our early days. We helped this robotics automation firm, which was, I think, they had just got raised a funding, and we helped them, I think, expand across about 7 different countries, right, over a span of about a couple of years.
Correct.
So that's when we actually, kind of hit product market fit, and we were
Correct.
like, wow, this really works.
And if you remember that particular incident or that particular company which you are referring to, the other complexity which they had is that they were not hiring the same skill across these 7 countries.
Yeah, there was client service
Yeah,
engineering,
they had
country
customer
managers,
support, they had country manager, they had sales guys.
Yeah.
So the thing was that adds a different level of complexity. So it's not only that I'm hiring one Java.NET and I'm hiring it in 7 countries. That is also complex, but that is slightly simpler because it's one skill. But when you have multiple skills, then the complexity becomes a completely different level because then you need different kinds of agencies. So imagine now in Poland I have this set, but in Germany I'm not hiring that anymore. I'm hiring something else, right? So I need a different set, completely different set because these Polish guys cannot help me at all, and so on and so forth. So the level of complexity is, you need 2 Swiss knives.
Right. In fact,
So,
I think
so
even the countries were very diverse. Right from LATAM to US to the East, we had China and Japan, and we were
yeah,
able to do this on a single contract.
yeah. And remember, in that particular incident, they also had countries where they did not have a legal entity. So even there, they also needed EOR.
Yeah.
So we also got them the EOR alliances, right? Which we have,
Absolutely.
of course, we don't do that ourselves because that's not our business. But because we are doing so much of multi-country hiring for so many customers, we also have alliances with EOR partners. And if you remember that, it was a big help for them because they were struggling to not only source but also to do the payrolling and compliance. And they couldn't do staffing because they don't have a legal entity. And if you don't have a legal entity, you can't do staffing. You have to use EOR. And therefore, that also was a problem that we were able to solve. So again, back to the Swiss knife example, it was like a multiple problem that we solved through one single window.
Right. And typically, in these 100 crore to let's say 5,000 crore companies, it could be in any industry. It could be maybe pharma, manufacturing, tech, and so on, right? We've seen that the HR teams are generally lean, right? And many a time they're struggling with bandwidth issues. So how does CBREX, help them scale up without actually making it a very overwhelming experience for them?
So I think if you look at the core value prop of CBREX, and now especially because we've been injecting a lot of AI elements into the CBREX platform, the core value proposition still remains that we want to give time back to the recruiters. So we want to take away the administrative hassles, and we discussed the contracting, evaluation, communication, payment on the vendor piece about 10 minutes ago. But we also want to take away the screening problem.
Right.
Because screening is a big problem and it's a huge administrative task and you have to do it. So as we have been scaling the platform, we have been looking at all the problems that recruiting teams have, especially the lean ones as you discussed, because they are smaller teams, right?
Absolutely.
So they have to do much more. Like one recruiter has to do almost everything.
Yeah, a lot of multitasking.
Lot of multitasking. So the whole problem solving approach that we have created as far as the platform is concerned is basically taking away those administrative tasks, taking away those repetitive tasks. And therefore, the screening is another issue that we have solved for them. So today, the recruiters are using the CBREX platform. Not only are they getting these vendors in Poland and Germany and so on, the contract, the payment, the invoicing, but they're also getting talent which has been screened by the vendors who have uploaded the profile and screened by the AI. So they are now getting like a filtration plant, right? So it's going through multiple levels of filtration. And therefore, what is landing up at their desk, or in this case, in their inbox or in their dashboard, on the CBREX dashboard, is a multiple layered screen candidate who then is just right for an interview.
Right.
So their time spent is just on engagement. They don't have to do anything on the administrative side at all. Their job then just becomes engaging the candidate, giving him the good experience, giving him or her the good candidate experience, right? And taking the candidate through the recruitment process.
Right. Absolutely.
So that's the other aspect of it.
Right. In fact, these manufacturing and pharma companies, right? So there's a lot of, hiring in terms of machine operator kind of roles, or it could be chemist kind of roles. And these candidates, this talent pool is not really available on job boards and pretty difficult to find these candidates. So how does CBREX help here?
And blue collar hiring or shop floor hiring, just to make it more specific, has a peculiar problem because it has a sourcing challenge which cannot be addressed by your typical job board means.
Right.
Like LinkedIn, for example. Like LinkedIn is the most popular tool which is used by most recruiting agencies or even recruiters to source. But LinkedIn is very good when you're looking at talent of a particular type. But as soon as you start moving into the shop floor area, which you talked about, the machine operators, then LinkedIn starts failing. So then you need specialized vendors with their private databases, which have been built over, say, 5 or 6 years for a particular location. right? So you cannot say because machine operators again, they're not that mobile.
Right.
So if you are hiring for a machine operator, in your example, if you look at say in New York or if you look at in Massachusetts, at best you are looking at that state or neighboring areas of the city. Even the state may be too big because they will not relocate. So then you need vendors who are specialists in that location.
Who basically connected to that local market.
Connect to that local market. And that is the problem that CBREX is able to solve. Because in our 4,500 vendor pool, right, we can pinpoint those 5 vendors who have locational expertise in New York and therefore can source those 20 machine operators for a plant in Long Island, which is in the New York State, because they have been doing that for 4 to 5 years and they don't need LinkedIn.
Right.
They don't need these external job boards because their dependency is not that high when it comes to job boards. They have private databases, they have private networks, they have connects. So they can pick up the phone and straight away start talking. And that is what CBREX can provide when it comes to these kind of, very what we call the shop floor hiring. And this can be across, right? So the example you've given is more for pharma, but if you look at even a manufacturing company, looking at say welders, fitters, millwrights, right? The same logic will apply.
Absolutely.
There will again be another set of 4 or 5 vendors, specific to location X, who are specialized in doing only for that location, and they don't need LinkedIn.
Right.
They have the private databases and they can source.
Right. And in fact, pharma hiring can be, notoriously difficult, right?
Yeah.
In fact, I was just going through this data of ours and realized that we have almost about 700 plus recruiting agency network in the pharma and, the life sciences space, right? So how do we help companies in this particular space to actually tap into this resource pool?
Yeah, so if you look at pharma, for example, or life sciences, which is slightly broader than pharma because it also involves enzymes and stuff like that, which are downstream to pharma, used by pharma companies to make the drugs.
Yeah.
There are several different types of roles for which they hire. So we talked about one level, which is at the operator level, which is at the shop floor, which is very important because that's manufacturing.
Absolutely.
But they also hire at the corporate level. So they hire sales guys, they hire the medical reps, they hire controllers. Right, regulatory affairs, like that's a big hire for them. So the advantage that we provide is through again the single window, you can hire an operator, right, a machine operator. You can hire a controller,
or maybe even an inhalation scientist or something.
An R&D scientist, right, an R&D scientist, and a sales guy. So imagine the convenience that a pharma company or a life sciences company can have using our platform. And then you extend this saying, hey, you know what, it's not limited only to skills, you can do it anywhere in the world. So that makes it even more convenient. So now we are saying, hey, you can hire this in Germany, you can hire this in Portugal, you can hire this in India, you can obviously hire this in the US and any other place where you want to set up a plant, because our vendor network is so robust that even if you pick a country which may be not that popular, quote unquote, with Indian companies, maybe Argentina, let me just give you one example, right? We will still have 5 to 15 vendors to start with. And we can always build a larger pool because that's our business. Right. So that gives immense elasticity, from a sourcing perspective to these organizations. And that really is what makes the platform so, attractive for these pharma players.
Right. And I think there is also no pain of managing these vendors. Let's say, for example, there's a spurt hiring today, but let's say maybe the next 3 months is going to be at a low, right? But at the same time, what happens is you have to keep continuing to manage these vendors. So I think in CBREX's case, that's a big advantage, right? So when you want to hire, you come on to CBREX, basically hire all the candidates. And then when you're not hiring, you don't have to manage any other agencies.
Yeah, and that's the great flexibility that the platform provides. In today's world, up and down hiring will always be there. It's been there for a while actually. So you say hiring 50, then it drops to 20. Sometimes it goes up to 150. It'll all be dependent on how the business is performing and what kind of orders you're getting on the sales side. And the advantage with the CBREX platform is that you don't need to touch your internal team up or down. So you keep us, steady state, whatever that 5, 10, 15, depending on what your size is and what you're hiring and what your estimates are, and leave the rest to the platform. So anytime, your numbers go up, the platform is there. Anytime the numbers come down, it's okay. You have your own team and you can do your hiring internally. which is what a lot of companies are doing today. So if you look at companies on our platform, mid-sized companies, maybe 1,000 crore manufacturing firms, they don't have a steady state hiring throughout 12 months of the year.
Right.
They have typically peaks and troughs. So their peaks are coming like April. If you look at Indian company, when the financial year starts, their peak is starting now. So March to maybe say September, October is when they will do 90% of their hiring. After that, it's only going to be attrition.
Right.
So 90% of their hiring, there they have a problem because their internal team cannot cope with it. So they come onto the platform, they put all their roles in, they take the support, we provide them with the vendor support and so on. And when September, October hits and the hiring will come down, then their internal team should be able to take care of it. Maybe they'll come onto the platform for very, very key roles or some very, very highly niche roles. And that is true with most companies in this 100 crore to say 3,000 crore bracket. Their hiring is never ever steady.
Yeah.
It's always going to be 5, then 2, then maybe 15, then nothing, and then again 15, then nothing. Because they are of that size, right? Unlike a company which is say maybe 20,000 crores, which is easier for them to forecast because they have a different manpower planning cycle. They have an annual cycle. These guys have a quarterly cycle. Some of them have a monthly cycle. So even if you ask them for the quarter, they will not know. They know for the month. Okay, for this month I need to hire 5. Next month, don't ask me. I don't know. And there the internal team becomes a problem. Because then what kind of a team do you maintain? Because you don't even know that next month, how many people am I going to hire? So that's where a platform like CBREX comes, so much in handy.
Right.
Because you can just, without any, tension, just say, okay, I have this platform in play. Anytime, there is a spike, I'm going to just give it out. And I'm sure that I'm going to get the hires.
Right.
So you don't have to worry about that
managing these agencies
at all
during that period of time.
Yeah. Or you don't have to get your internal team spiked and spiked down. It's just a constant number.
Right. And most of these companies struggle with market intel, right? And this is extremely critical that especially when you're expanding, like what do you have to pay a sales manager in Singapore versus like maybe a sales manager in Brazil. What kind of talent pool is available, and so on and so forth, right? So how does CBREX actually help with providing market intel to companies?
Yeah, and that's a great part, right? Because especially when you're expanding globally, market intel, I think, is probably far more important than ever.
Right.
Because these are new markets, okay? And you have no idea what the salary levels are, what the cultural nuances are. You don't even know how the salary structures are framed. Because comp packages have different ways to get framed in different kinds of countries.
Yeah.
So there itself you don't have. Then you come to talent pool availability. You don't know, right? You don't even know what are the various other nuances like overtime, bonuses, sign-on bonuses. So there are like 8 to 10 different things which you are not aware of. So then you need, as I said, you need those Swiss knives, right? Because then you need multiple pieces of information, which a platform like ours is able to provide, because we have done that kind of hiring in the past. So we have now, if you look at the CBREX platform, we have hired across 31 countries today.
Yeah.
Okay, and maybe we'll add the 32nd in the next
We've
couple
already
of months.
done 32 actually. We'll
32.
probably be
So
adding
the 33rd, right? So the 33rd in the next couple of months, hopefully. So imagine we have live data for these 32 countries, and like live and precise. We are not speculating here.
Right.
So when a requirement comes in, our ability to provide market intel to customers for this particular hire in Netherlands is going to be 10x higher than what you would get, and I'm right now giving it for free. Don't even charge for it, right?
Yeah.
And companies pay good money to get market intel. Market intel is not cheap to get. And even with AI, the thing with AI is that you will get intel at a higher level, like it's generic intel, but we have specific intel.
Right.
So our AI engines are able to combine our specific intel with the general intel of the LLM, which you can get through the LLM, and combine it and then give it to you. So it's far more superior than just querying an LLM.
Right.
So that is the big advantage that we're able to provide.
In fact, recently, we helped this organization hire in Poland, right? And they got another project in Denmark. So he wanted some kind of market intel for Denmark because that was a completely new geography for them. And now we've kickstarted the Denmark project.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah,
extremely beneficial.
that's a great example.
Yeah, because
That's
you're making an informed decision before.
And what kind of intel were we able to give this company in like for Denmark? What kind of intel were
This
there?
was typically tech skills.
Okay.
In the range of I think 5 to 8 years of experience.
Hmm.
And they also wanted to know in terms of what is the kind of talent pool available.
So how many
Is
people
this
are with
something
this
that
skill?
is this something that is feasible?
Okay.
Or should we even say yes to the customer?
Wow.
Yeah, should we even
Okay.
say yes to the customer?
Or should we give a different skill?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, interesting.
But that was, in fact, he found it extremely helpful, right? And
So we are actually helping this particular customer example that you're giving like a pre-sales, right? Like as they are formulating the bid, the sales bid, and having their discussion with their customer, we are helping them formulate a pre-sales document.
Right.
Right.
It's like a pre-research,
Yeah.
They probably go dive deeper if,
Yeah.
if they feel that this information has some kind of meaning and the framework is good. So I think it was really helpful for him. He found it extremely helpful. Yeah. So we recently helped a travel tech company hire across 3 different countries, like Dubai and I think Spain, even the US, right? And within 45 days of onboarding them, we were able to get them final selects. So how is it even possible for us to, tap into this talent pool so quickly and also so simultaneously across so many different geographies?
And I think that's where our algorithm is helping. So if you look at the algorithm that we've been fine-tuning for the last 4 to 5 years, earlier built on machine learning and now, of course, built on AI, to be able to select the right kind of vendors for a particular job. So this particular example that you are giving, it sounds complex on paper, but for us it's not complex because for us it's like different boxes. When you say Germany, our algorithm knows, okay, for Germany it's these 3. When you say Poland, our algorithm knows, okay, for Poland these are these 2. For Netherlands, there are these 5. So it's 3 plus 2 plus 5. And that gets activated within what? 5 hours. So within 5 hours, you've activated a supply chain, 3 plus 2 plus 5. That's 10 suppliers working for you, in a matter of 5 hours in 3 different countries.
Yeah.
And these are suppliers who have done this in the past. So not only have you activated 10 different suppliers, but you've activated 10 different relevant suppliers, which is obviously the key because irrelevant suppliers won't help you. So your supply chain kicks in within 5 hours. Now imagine if you were to do this outside of the CBREX universe, it will take you at least a month to activate 10 different vendors in 3 different countries for different skill sets. And so you've taken a 30-day process and brought it down to 5 hours, which is why you crashed your 90 to 100-day hiring timeline to 30 to 45 days. Because this pre-part has come down and it's like 1 day, right? Like 5 hours is even less than 24 hours. So obviously everything downstream is going to crash because this is the beginning. If this itself takes you 30 days, then everything else will take you even longer. So that's the difference. So we are now allowing an organization, if they decide on a Monday morning, hey, I need to open up Netherlands on Tuesday, okay, and they give us those recs on a Tuesday morning, technically, if they move quickly, they can get Netherlands operational in about 10 days from Tuesday, like operation. So I've decided on Monday, within 10, maybe 15, maybe 2 weeks, right? Maybe the guy has a bit of a notice period. Within 2 weeks, I can get a guy onboarded in Netherlands, and I'm sitting in Mumbai. That's the beauty of CBREX. Otherwise, outside CBREX, that would take you, I don't know, 100, 200, I don't know how many days.
Yeah. And a lot of times what happens is you'll have to probably hire in onesies and twosies, right? It's not like you're going to be hiring 10 different resources or 15 different resources. In fact, many a times sales folks or, it could even be like roles like country manager, you're probably just going to be starting with like that 1 or 2 hires. And for just those 1 or 2 hires, you'll actually have to do so much of groundwork.
Yeah.
Scouting these agencies.
And because you're only doing 1 or 2 hires, you are less attractive for vendors. Large vendors won't touch you because the money they'll make from you is very small. And small vendors don't have the capacity to service you. So you're caught in no man's land, right? Large ones won't touch you, small ones won't
and
work
probably they're not even familiar with you. So there is no relationship.
Yeah, no relationship. So you have to build all that.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. On a Monday morning, you decide Netherlands, 10 days you're up and running in Netherlands. Otherwise, Monday morning you decide Netherlands, God help you. Maybe, I don't know, 100, 200, 150 days, to do all that you just described. Because, saying it is easy, but doing vendor
Execution,
scouting,
is going to be
is not easy at
very
all.
difficult. True. So that brings me to the problem of having a vacant role open for months together.
Mhm.
Right. So let's say there's a sales role that's open for many months. It's gone unfulfilled. It doesn't become only a HR problem. It also impacts the company, right? Their revenue. So how does CBREX actually help the plug this revenue leakage problem?
Yeah, that's a fundamental problem, and it gets very acute in mid-sized companies because for them, each role which is unfulfilled is having a huge impact on revenue because they have lesser number of people.
Right.
I mean, it's simple, right? If I have 100,000 people, one is one on 100,000. If I have 100 people, it's one on 100, right? So it's very simple math. So their time to fill becomes extremely critical because time to fill, as you rightly said, is not an HR or a TA problem. It's a business problem. It's a CEO problem.
Yeah.
Right? So time to fill is the most important metric, right? It's very similar to your sales, time to onboard. So if you look at a sales business, hey, well, how long does it take me to onboard a customer once I get a lead? That is time to onboard is very important. Is it 2 weeks, 5 weeks, 10 weeks? And businesses really look at that number, through a microscope. Same way, time to fill becomes very important. And time to fill is largely determined by how are you able to activate a supply chain which is relevant instantly at the press of a button.
Right.
And that is what CBREX enables. So we are enabling companies to activate vendor pools and therefore activate supply chains of talent within, as I said, within 5 hours or 4 hours, maybe in some cases even lesser. So it's literally at the press of a button, which otherwise will take months to activate. And because of that activation of the supply chain, that vacant chair or the vacant desk, whichever way you want to look at it, problem does not exist. So typically, if you look at any position which has gone aging for 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, which is where the problems start happening, that does not happen in the CBREX universe because we are able to then juggle it very quickly. So we are activating, say, 3 vendors or 4 vendors. We are watching it for 24 to 48 hours, saying, oh, hey, we may have a issue here because the role is so specialized that these 3, 4 vendors are not getting it. Then we have another vendor which plugs in. So we are able to do that jugglery again at the press of a button. And therefore the time to fill crashes dramatically, which is why the vacant chair problem does not arise, which otherwise is very common in outside CBREX, and it hurts. It really hurts from a revenue perspective.
Absolutely. In fact, that reminds me, this chemical manufacturing company that we helped. I think they're about $1 billion and scaling very, very quickly across multiple countries. So they had to actually start off with their leadership hiring first. They hired these country managers. And, the TA leader was actually telling me that because we were able to, find these candidates really quickly and get them onboarded quickly, we were actually, able to kickstart that whole business in that country much in advance in terms of, what we had actually forecasted.
Yeah.
Right. So that's a huge benefit.
And they must have gained some revenue
already, right?
Right, already, because they were able to advance or fast forward the kickoff operations. And therefore, the person who was supposed to join in August actually joined in June or maybe in March. So you've already gained 5 months, which is a lot.
Yeah.
Because anybody in a critical new role takes 3 or 4 months to just adjust before he or she starts delivering revenue. So you've actually collapsed that big time. And therefore, the revenue impact of that particular example that you're giving for this chemical company could be running in, depending on how critical that role is and what kind of order volume that they're talking about, it could be running in millions of dollars.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Right. So that's yeah, you're right. That's a good example to to talk about, because that's the kind of advantage that we are able to provide. So as you rightly said, it's not for the mid-market companies. It's not only a TA or an HR tool. It's actually a business tool.
It's a business tool. Yeah.
It's a revenue impact tool which helps them increase their revenue, because we are able to shorten that time frame and deliver supply chains which are instant and which are reliable and which are accurate. These are the 3 things. Very similar to supply chain which you have for your materials. Right? Every company in the world relies on a supply chain. You cannot build a business without a supply chain. So you're buying things from other. Nobody says I'm producing everything. That's not possible. I'm running a restaurant. I'm buying tomatoes, potatoes, onions from some other people, right? My ingredients are not being produced by me. So I have a supply chain. And that supply chain, if it is not accurate, instead of tomatoes, if I get potatoes, it's not going to work for me. And if I need it at 10 a.m., if I get it at 1 p.m., it's not going to work for me again.
Yeah.
And if there are bad quality, then again, it's not. So there are many problems there in the supply chain. But unfortunately, in the recruiting space, nobody has looked at it from a supply chain perspective. And that, if you ask me, is the fundamental shift that we are trying to create. We're saying, boss, it is the same thing. There's no difference.
Most of it you're saying is in silos, and
Yeah.
we're trying to piece everything together.
Everything together and create one supply chain, which is absolutely reliable. This supply chain does not fail. It gives you reliability. If I want to hire in 5 days, I can hire in 5 days. That's number one. That's reliability. Second is, if I want to hire sales, I'll get sales. I won't get accountants.
Right.
And third is, it's global. So it can be happening anywhere in the world. So this is the kind of supply chain we are talking about. And that is what we have managed to create, which is why, we are saying that just like you look at reliability of supply chains in other parts of your business, look at the same way for talent acquisition. And that's where CBREX fits like a glove.
Right. Anyway, from, Vizag or to maybe Netherlands.
Yeah. I mean, the spread is immense.
Yeah.
Any skill, anywhere in the world.
Right.
The supply chain is reliable.
Right. In fact, my favorite part is, when our users tell us that global hiring has now become so convenient with CBREX. Do you want to just sum up the this entire convenience factor for our audience?
Yeah, I think if you look at the convenience aspect of it, we've discussed the contractual, the payment, invoicing, sourcing, reliability, quality, all that. But I think the main thing, or one of the main things, is the fact that it's on one dashboard. So I am now, as a recruiter or as a TA head or even as an HR head, I have just one view and just one place to go to hire anywhere in the world. And I have all the metrics, I have all the requirements, I have all the vendors, I have all the payments, I have all the resumes, I have each and every analytics on each and every vendor, whether it's in Poland or it's in Netherlands or in Germany or in India, in one place. And that saves me a lot of time. And it is so much convenient. It's like what we do with e-commerce today, right? Why is e-commerce so good? Because when you log into an e-commerce portal, you have everything in one place. And it is reliable. I mean, when they say I will deliver in 2 or 3 days, they deliver in 2 or 3 days.
There's a guarantee.
There's a guarantee. And that is very important. Like actually, if you look at e-commerce, without the logistics part of it, it's useless. Just placing an order, I mean, doesn't help me. I need it to land at my doorstep in 3 days or whatever the time frame is. And that is what makes that whole business so attractive. And the same thing will happen in the TA space. So we're bringing the reliability of e-commerce and now quick commerce, which is even more reliable and much faster than e-commerce, to hiring, which has never been done before. And that is the beauty of what we have built on in CBREX.
Absolutely. And maybe for CEOs and HR leaders who are watching this and they probably want to know more, what do they do next? Like, how do they get started? And would you also want to take them through what the process is going to look like?
So I think, look, best way is to reach out to us through our platform, which is cbr.exchange.
Yeah.
Right. And then we go from there because we typically have people who would then handhold you through the initial process and get you started. Of course, we have a lot of material available, which you can read on social media to understand more about what CBREX does. But the best way is through our platform, through our website. So you get into the website and then you connect and then we go from there. But the process to get started actually is a very simple process because apart from the documentation and the contractual part of it, the get-go is a 20-minute exercise. So it sounds big, global and sounds complicated, but actually it's 20 minutes. In 20 minutes, you can post, and we have now so many tools on our platform which helps you even post roles very, very quickly. You can deliver all the material that you need, the must-haves, the sourcing guidelines, and so on and so forth. And then you are good to go. Once you post, within 2-3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours, you start getting qualified candidates, landing right into your inbox, and that's the beauty. You don't have to go anywhere. You post and then you relax. You can do your other work, right? And then within some time, you start getting qualified candidates, and then you start taking it ahead. So actually, it's a very, very simple and convenient process, right? And this, again, as we discussed, happens across the globe. So it doesn't matter whether you're posting in Argentina, you're posting in Africa, or you're posting in India. It's the same thing.
We just sign off on a global rate card.
Sign off on a global rate card, post a role anywhere. We have those drop downs. You can now, and if you look at it, we even have provisions where you can post a temp role. So it's not only full time. You have a temp role posted. We have vendors who will source temp. We have vendors. We have staffing companies who will payroll it.
Right.
We have EOR companies who will help you payrolling after sourcing. You can even source gig roles. We have customers who don't source temp or perm. They source gig because they only want a guy to work for 20 hours a week.
Yeah.
Source those roles because there are vendors for that also. So it's basically just a single window
Right.
through which you can post any kind of role in any part of the world and get it within instants. And that is the beauty of the platform.
Yeah. Convenience personified.
Yeah. So Dev, let me take you back to sourcing days. Okay. Imagine you had an AI tool like what we have on CBREX today. So two questions here. First of all, which AI tool would be your favorite as a sourcer, right, among all that we have?
Okay.
And you know those tools, so I won't tell you that. And second is, what would you do with the time that the AI tool would put back in your hands? Because now the AI tool is taking care of a lot of things that you were doing manually when you were sourcing because you don't have these tools. So one is what would have been your favorite AI tool, and second is what would you do with the time that the AI tool would put back in your hands?
Interesting questions. I think my personal favorite probably is C-Source because it puts you at a different level. Before you even start doing any kind of grunt work, you're actually more focused on what do I need to focus on, right? So in terms of, let's say, researching on this particular skill or particular requirement, what is the kind of candidate pool availability, or where am I, going to be able to find these candidates? Or let's say these locations are going to be expensive vis-a-vis maybe, some nearby locations which are going to be more reasonable in terms of compensation. I think C-Source is my personal favorite because Market Intel puts the team at a different level, right? Second, maybe, do I get a second?
Okay, you can. Not a part of the question, but you can.
Yeah, and second probably would maybe CMAP because it just helps you find the recruiting agencies who are best suited for a job and anywhere across the globe, right? So that for me is magical, right? Because it's not necessary that you're only going to be hiring for a particular tech stack on an ongoing basis all the time, right? Today it could be that I'm going to be hiring for an HR manager, or tomorrow I could probably be hiring for a very senior profile, or it could probably be that I'm looking at some kind of blue collar workforce. So, and it's impossible that you're going to be having the strengths to source for all types of requirements across all geographies. It's just it's impossible, right? So I think CMAP probably is mine. I would probably say that's probably my first favorite, and maybe C-Source later. But yeah, that's probably how I would rank both of them.
And the second part of the question, what will you do with the time that AI would put back in your hands?
Okay, so I probably would definitely focus on candidate experience, because when you're having a conversation with a candidate, it's not a very transactional conversation. There's so much more that you can actually mine from the candidate, right? It could be in terms of the work that they've done. It's also adding to your knowledge base, right? It also helps you understand, the entire landscape of that particular requirement, right? So he's not just talking about himself. He's also talking about probably what kind of work his organization is doing, what kind of work his colleagues are doing, and the entire infrastructure and so on. So there's a lot of information that you can actually gather while speaking to candidates. And I think definitely candidate relationship management, or just candidate experience, is something else that I would definitely focus on.
And that's a great point, because I think if you really look at the great recruiters, not the good ones, great recruiters using every single candidate interaction to learn. Because where else can you learn as good as you can learn by talking to a candidate? You can know the market, you know the skill set, you know what is happening, you know about the company, you know who's laying off, you know who's hiring. Because candidates know everything.
Right.
And they will tell you the inside story unfiltered. So actually you can come to know everything if you are clued into these candidate conversations. the knowledge base is almost incomparable.
Right.
You're like an AI by yourself.
Absolutely.
Like an LLM.
And
Yeah.
Gautam, another very important point is that LLMs are not going to be able to give you all the information.
Hmm.
You know, there's a lot of hidden aspects, you know, when you're talking to a candidate. It could be that there's probably something happening in the organization, there's some kind of churn happening, or, you know, so there's a lot of hidden data that is probably not available on the LLMs, right? And this is, you know, retrievable only when you're having these conversations with these candidates. So I would definitely, like I said, probably focus on the candidate conversations.
So if I were to summarize this in a nutshell, your advice to a recruiter who's starting his or her career now in 2026 would be that use the AI tools, get the time back in your hands,
Right.
spend time on candidate conversations, and then become a super recruiter.
Absolutely. Whatever is you know, whatever you can automate it. Wherever you can, you know, kind of use the AI tools to speeden up things for you, do that. And I think you should probably use the time available for more human conversations, right? Because that's basically what matters.
And learn from each of them.
And learn, absolutely.
So they've very interesting thought, you know, that I was having over the last say week or so. See, when you and I started our careers, a lot of the sourcing or recruiting work was administrative, and we didn't have that many tech tools available, right? Where we could outsource it to a machine, and therefore recruitment. A lot of recruitment was basically humdrum. It was slightly boring, because you were like doing repetitive tasks. My thought, and this is where I want to get your views because you've done this as long as I have, is, do you think that now a person who's entering the field today needs to be more excited about recruitment as a career than you and I were? Because now you have this superpower called AI, which is able to take a lot of these tasks off your hands. And therefore, you're really getting into a profession where you can spend a lot of time, you know, doing really value-added, meaningful work and very little of administrative work, because you have many vendors who are willing to provide you those tools to take those administrative tasks off your hand.
Right. So Gautam, if you remember, you know, back early days, very early days, we used to spend maybe a couple of hours a day, or maybe even more than that, just maintaining Excel sheets. You know, like take a resume, copy paste name, put it in the cell, phone number,
email
put it in the
ID.
cell. You know, back then, if you think about it, you could have probably used that time for much better things, right? And post which we in fact hired data entry operators.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I forgot. Yeah.
Yeah. So to, you know, actually to just take that load off you and just have you focus on sourcing. So definitely, I think we've come a long way. Recruiters today, you know, or the younger folks getting into this recruiting space today, I think they're probably at a far better advantage as compared to us. You know, and I think what is really exciting for the, you know, the younger recruiting folks is that you have like a plethora of tools. It really depends upon how do you want to leverage this, right? It all completely depends upon your hunger, right? So how do you want to leverage this? So do you want to you know, increase your knowledge base and have more qualitative candidate conversations? Is that what you want to do? So you have a tool, you know, at a click of a button, right, where you can get these questions that you can ask the candidates, where you can, you know, delve deeper, right? And what happens is, I think AI in a way democratizes it for everybody, right? So, you know, in the past, what would happen is I would probably be, you know, limited to only the knowledge that I would probably have, right? But now the LLMs actually democratizes the whole thing for you. So I could probably today, you know, get information on what an inhalation scientist does and ask some probing questions, right? Or even let's say if I'm talking to a tech candidate, you know, I can probably understand, you know, delve deeper as to what they really do, right? So I think from that standpoint, it's so exciting for a recruiter actually getting into, you know, recruiting in today's age, right? And of course, all the mundane tasks are getting done by, you know, tools. So you can just focus on what really matters.
And therefore, the recruiter who's getting into the profession today needs to be far more tech savvy than what you and I were. I mean, our tech was internet and email and so on,
Right.
and maybe ATS after some time. But today, the recruiter has tools for almost every task,
Right.
including first level interviews, right? You have voice based agents doing first level interviews at the lower level, may not be for senior candidates because they may not even do those interviews, but so there are so many tools. So the fact remains that if you are a person entering this profession and if you are tech savvy and if you're tech hungry with curiosity to know more about tech and what are the tech tools available, as you rightly said, you can now have a profession which is so enriching
Yeah.
than what you and I had, when we started our careers.
Absolutely. And in fact, even in terms of candidate reach, we just had the phone
Yeah.
and we had probably the like an Excel sheet where we had to headhunt candidates and just enter data, right? So, but it doesn't work like that anymore. You have LinkedIn, you have so many social media platforms where you can actually, cast like a wide net, right? So I think, you can do so much more. You can automate so many things. In fact, you can even do recruitment marketing, right? Even in terms of the tools that have come into the market. Back then, we had maybe just job boards, very rudimentary job boards to start off with. But that way, recruiting has come a long way. So, Gautam, there are several early stage startups, maybe in the sub 100 crore or 200 crore range, who probably have one HR person and maybe no TA persons at all, right? So, is there some way that CBREX can help these organizations?
In fact, the platform is a perfect fit for them because you just need one person at your end to operate it. Okay, and that person may not even have that much of recruiting or HR experience, but which is where we have designed the platform, and that's it. And then that person can then use the platform, source anywhere in the world, get relevant profiles into their inbox, and then go from there. So actually, it is very well suited for companies with very lean. When I'm saying lean, it could be like just one or two people, or just one. In fact, not even two people in the talent or in the HR function. And the power that the platform provides is that that one person will have now 8 arms, right, instead of two. Okay, so it'll like think of it like that, and that those 8 arms will help you hire anywhere in the world.
Okay, great. So, Gautam, we have almost about 700 plus recruiting agencies, who are specialized in the pharma and life sciences space, right? Is there any way that organizations can actually leverage this resource pool?
Yeah, and which is why we've been so successful in the pharma and life sciences space because in that 700 agencies that we have, we also have sub-classification of that 700 as to who is good in what type of pharma hiring. Because pharma, we have discussed, is not one box, multiple boxes. So who's good at machine operator, who's good at sales, who's good at regulatory affairs, and so on. So that is what gives pharma companies that edge because we're able to quickly give them those agencies which are good in that particular sub-vertical of pharma.
Early days, we helped this robotics automation company hire across about 7 different countries. That's when we realized we had hit product market fit and we were like, wow, this works. Would you like to talk about that?
Yeah, that was a great moment, right? If you remember, we were thrilled to bits, and it's that eureka aha moment where you're saying, okay, what we have built enables, and this company was, I think, at that time 100 CR or in that
Yeah,
range.
they just got raised
Yeah,
a big round of funding.
there's a B or a C. I think C they had raised, and they wanted to go international to these 7 countries, looking at different skill sets, looking at different levels of hiring, and we enabled all of that through the CBREX platform. One window, and they could hire across 7 countries with different skill sets. Yeah, that was a great moment for us.
Right from sales roles to country managers to client service engineers and
Yeah,
all of it.
yeah, and across Europe, across Latin America, across US,
Yeah, and Japan,
and
China.
Japan. Yes, not to forget Japan.
Right.
So, Dev, one of the things that has been in my mind is this whole market intel piece that we have created, and we discussed some use cases around that. And now, of course, we've used a lot of AI, and you and I have been hiring for like longer than we like to remember. So, imagine if you go back in time and say that when we were hiring, we never had access to this kind of market intel that people have access to today, or people can get access to today, especially the guys who are using our platform. How do you think market intel would have changed the way you, as a recruiter, would have hired 20 years ago? How would it have impacted your recruiting or your sourcing process?
Right. Interesting question, Gautam. One is, I think, because we were in the RPO space, we were front ending with multiple customers at the customer side, right? And many a time they would always give you the toughest of the toughest requirements. And what would happen was that we would actually do the groundwork, and we already lose about, let's say, a week to 2 weeks doing the groundwork, doing the research, and then figuring out that, okay, look, there's only this much talent pool that's available. And by then, the hiring managers are like, what are you guys doing? Right? So in a way, we were, at times cutting a sorry figure, right? So I think this would have been a really big boon for us, because it would have made our teams and the organization, that the RPO organization, look really good in front of the hiring managers if we were able to give them the market intel within maybe minutes or maybe within an hour, right? It would have made a huge difference. And it's also helping the hiring managers set the expectations with their customers as to what is actually deliverable, right? So from that standpoint, I think it would have been like a magic wand.
So if you had access to C-Source, right, as a recruiter 20 years ago,
Yeah.
then you would have got an armor. Because when you go into a meeting, right, and I still remember those days when you go into a meeting, there's a volley of questions. I want to hire this person, this kind of skill set, and obviously salary is always a constraint. And I want that person yesterday, because everybody wants everything yesterday, right? And then you are on the defensive,
Absolutely.
and you're just taking notes and saying, I'll come back to you, I'll come back to you, I'll come back to you, because you don't have any data there.
Right.
And now with C-Source, you would have then had your body armor completely. So anybody is firing at you, you don't really care.
Yeah, and being on the back foot is not a great
It's
experience.
not a good experience. So actually, that's a great point. So actually speaking, C-Source and tools like C-Source, which are market intel based,
Yeah.
actually provide the recruiter the ability to bat on the front foot.
Absolutely.
And not be ready for any kind of answer with actual data points,
Right.
and be able to refute if needed things which people take for granted, like, hey, this skill I'll get hired in like whatever 5 days. No, you won't hire that skill in 5 days.
Yeah.
And if you want it in 5 days, there are three things you have to change, either
Yeah,
from a salary
exactly.
perspective, from a skill perspective, or from a location perspective.
Right.
So all those things, what you were just saying, that when you were doing the RPO 20 years ago, you didn't have that data, and you took 2 weeks or 1 week to get that data.
Right.
By then the guy has already sent you 20 emails, and therefore you're already on the back foot.
Absolutely.
Yeah.